Welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast. I'm your host, Richie O'Leary, and joined as always when we're talking Penn State wrestling, my co-host and Happy Valley Insider's very own Joey Klender. Joey, exciting start to the season for Penn State wrestling. NWCA All-Star Classic was last weekend. You were there. What are your kind of high-level thoughts on the event?
It was a really, really great event. It was my first time at the All-Star, so I was really happy to be there. There was 5 Penn State guys in the lineup, so plenty of things to take away. There was some really great wrestling from everybody. It was a lot of fun to watch, and it was a good time. So I was really happy to be there.
All right, let's start off with a not so good match. Bo Bartlett ended up losing to Jesse Mendez, 4-1 decision. Did we kind of see this one coming a little bit?
I thought Bell would have a little more for him, to be completely honest with you, but just thinking back of how the match went, I just felt at certain points that we saw that Bo from last year where he was a little hesitant to get to his attacks and a little just not super trusting of himself. I can't really remember exactly how the match went down, to be completely frank. It was a lot of wrestling that night, but plus we were right where the guys walked out, and so the people that were sitting mat side were kind of blocking our view. So I spent half the time watching the mat and half the time looking at the jumbo screen. So, but yeah, my impressions were pretty much that Bo was kind of in that mode where he's a little hesitant to trust his offense, and Mendez was able to neutralize a lot of his shot attempts and just finished a little better. And these guys are going to hit each other quite a few times this year, so it's not really something to get too upset about. But we'll see how Bo looks next time we see him out on the mat. But
Yeah. 149 pounds. Shane Van Ness didn't look like he missed a beat from that injury last year. Looked
no, he did not.
ready to go. 16-4 major decision against Ty Waters from West Virginia. Kind of have a high-level thoughts on that one, I guess.
So I thought this was pretty much the statement of the evening from anybody, including Starachi, who we'll get to later. But Shane looked excellent. He looked like that knee is not going to be an issue. He looked super excited to get on the mat. He was actually smiling at Waters when he put his toe on the line, and it was pretty nuts. He looked unbelievable. He had some really great attacks and some really great finishes. Shane really, he came out, made quite the statement on Saturday night, and it was really, really impressive to watch.
Next up, 157 pounds, newcomer to the weight class, Tyler Kasich. Impressed. Defeated number 3, Peyton Keller from Ohio, 4-2 in a decision.
Yeah, this is another one I wasn't super surprised with. Kasich obviously had his coming out party at NCAAs last year. If you want to say that was his coming out party, I think everybody who's a Penn State fan or follows the team or follows college wrestling knew that he had a really great year last year, but he's in a new weight class, so I think people were excited to see how he did there, and he looked great Saturday. It's kind of up in the air still, I guess, whether it's going to be Kasich or Facundo at that weight for Penn State. So the talk is that Kasich really doesn't want a red shirt, so Facundo's kind of he really doesn't have any red shirts left available to him, so Kasich wins the spot. I mean, maybe they'll go back and forth as the year goes out or goes on. But Kasich really looked great. It's hard for me to imagine that Facundo could knock him off with how he looked the other night. It's telling also that Kasich was the guy to wrestle in the All-Star match and not Facundo, which makes sense to an extent because Kasich wrestled last year, Facundo didn't. So there's some questions that I guess we'll get the answer to coming Sunday with the Black Knight. So we'll see. But, Kasich looked really good the other night and, knocked off a good opponent. So
yeah,
there's that.
That's true. Next up, 174 pounds. Levi Haynes jumps up a couple weight classes this offseason. Now, just made a pretty impressive 7-0 decision against number 3 ranked Cade Davos of South Dakota State. Do you think there's any concern with him in that weight class, or do you think he's just going to kind of blow through most of it?
I think he's gonna really not hit too much adversity until he hits Keegan O'Toole, whether that would be,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when they meet throughout the year, but NCAA seems like when they'll probably finally get that matchup. So I think that's kind of how this weight class is going to go this year. I think it's kind of a two-horse race. No disrespect to anybody else at the weight, but Haynes obviously was so good at 57 for 2 years. He only had the loss in the finals against the kid from UNC a couple years ago. What was his name? Austin something, I feel like. But anyway, um, Haynes is going to be, I think, a little stronger at this weight because he's not cutting. I think this is where he wants to be. I would expect this year to be pretty smooth for him in terms of just performances and who he who he wrestles all year. So
Yeah.
I think really we're not going to see too much of a challenge for him until he gets to O'Toole. But he's had some close matches. He had close matches last year, 57, but we don't know if that was from the weight cut or what. So we'll see how the year goes. But he looked great the other night. Didn't give up a point.
Yeah. No, hot start. 184 pounds, last but not least. Number 1, Carter Sirachi versus number 2, Parker Kyson of Northern Iowa. 4-1 sudden victory. Well, a little closer than I thought it would have been.
The match from a score perspective was
Yeah.
close, but I didn't think it was particularly close
Mhm.
in terms of watching the match.
Mhm.
Keck was like really kind of slow getting back to the line. He almost seemed like he was pretty burnt out by the second period.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that was Carter just kind of just wearing him down, or maybe it's just early in the year and he's just not like in the greatest of shape yet. But this match wasn't particularly exciting, but I think you really have to look at the fact that Starachi, he's extremely dominant, but he isn't a guy that goes out and puts up like 14 points and doesn't give up anything. He's a guy, I think it was the last 3 guys he's beaten. He hasn't given up a point, and they're all national champions. Well, it can't be because Rocco Welsh isn't a national champion, but the last 3 national champions he's wrestled are Mekhi Lewis, Keck, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Who do you wrestle in the semis at nationals? You might have to help me there.
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up real quick.
I can't remember, but the last 3 he's wrestled, I don't think he's given up a point, or maybe 1 point. He gave up 1 point to Keck.
Shane Griffith.
That's it.
Yep. Yeah,
from Stanford and Michigan. So
should have known that. I have the hat on. I have the hat on too. Jersey. Come on.
Like Jersey boy.
I'm an idiot.
Right. No. That name would have slipped by any of us. But no, I mean, Carter, I think, is just going to be like overwhelmingly dominant at this weight class this year. I think he's probably from like a domination perspective, I would think he's probably going to be the guy who's going to win the Hodge this year. I'm trying to think of anybody else who could come off. I'm just not really sure. Like Haynes comes to mind, obviously, but I'm just trying to think, from other weight classes and everything like that. But Carter's so solid in every position. He's just been really lights out. Last year he was wrestling on a bum leg and still beat Mekhi Lewis in the quarters, and didn't wrestle Big Tens. Had a really unfavorable seed with getting the 9, even though the injury was there and everything.
Yeah.
He just kind of seemed to outclass Parker in every position, and I think that's kind of what we're going to see all year, especially considering Parker was really unbelievable last year at this weight. Really didn't have too many tight matches, I guess. Carter kind of just had his way with every position, I feel like. I don't know if anyone's really ever going to challenge him to an extent where I'm looking at bonus points almost every match this year, with apart from a few. He looked really good. He was just dominant. So score doesn't really reflect that, but it wasn't it wasn't a super close match from like watching it.
I mean, that's basically all I really got from the All-Star match. Not a whole lot to really talk about. Anything else before we kind of move on a little bit?
No, you know, I think that everybody should kind of take these results with somewhat of a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's easy to kind of look at these and be like, oh, well, so and so did this and so did that. But
Mm-hmm.
you have to remember this is an exhibition match. And yeah, these guys want to go out and win and everything like that. But like, I look at it from a perspective as it's really hard to equate this to like a semis match at the national tournament or something like that, just because like guys are going to put themselves in situations that are a little more risky if it's like the match that could take you to the national finals versus an exhibition in state college before Penn State's even had a dual meet.
Sure.
So, we talked a lot of last week about maybe tipping your hand and everything like that. You don't really want to give away too much early in the year. So I wouldn't really be too stressed about Bo losing to Mendez. I mean, we saw what he did last year early in the year with the hesitation, and then by the end of the year, he was in the finals. So, like, try not to sweat about it. I mean, obviously, Andrew Alvarez is back, so that's another guy that's added to the mix here. I really wish he would have been in the All Star. I mean, the finals rematch is great, but I would have liked to have seen him. Um, yeah, I mean, these close ones like the Mendez and the Bartlett match, take it for what you will, but don't get crazy with it.
Yeah. Penn State also wrestled Drexel on Sunday in their first dual meet of the season. It finished team score 41-3. Nothing really to take away from that. They won 9 out of 10 bouts, rolled 25-4 edge and takedowns, 14 bonus points, a pin, forfeit, 4 tech falls. I mean, not really a whole lot to take away from that. I know Van Ness didn't go because he was in the All-Star, but they still did send out Haynes, Starachi, Kirk, Messenbrink, technically Lilladall, even though he got the forfeit win, and Braden Davis. The rest were mostly backups, but I guess Facundo's kind of at an or in that 157.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if the Black Knight kind of decides who's going to be wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
I just really don't know what the strategy is going to be because there's been so many times where they've thrown the backup in for a duel,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason. My big takeaways from that duel were, I was really excited to see Lilladol, and obviously the forfeit was a little disappointing, but it is what it
Yeah.
is. The other thing is Davis had a kind of a close match. It was pretty
Mm-hmm.
exciting. He kind of tweaked his knee a little bit at one point, so that's something to keep an eye on. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it'll be too crazy. But I mean, it's tough to really have some valuable takeaways when you wrestle a team like Drexel. Drexel, no disrespect to them, but I mean, this was two different levels of wrestling here, and you know, you didn't really get the whole team because we all started the night before. So
Yeah.
I think we'll wait till the Big Ten schedule starts, and then we start to kind of break down things and take a little more weight to them. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Yeah.
good start to the year, of course.
You mentioned the Black Knight Invitational a couple times. It starts next Sunday or this upcoming Sunday at 10 a.m. But it sounds like based on their preview that they put up, they're going to line up. The lineup could include 20 plus competitors. Do we kind of know what their plan is? Is it going to be mostly starters? Is it going to be a mixture? Is it going to be? I know we just talked about a potential wrestle off between Kasich and Facundo.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about who they'll send. In the
Mm-hmm.
past, they've brought some pretty good kids and they brought some starters, and they might try to settle the whole 57 thing there. I'm not really sure, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know. I mean, they haven't really put out a list yet of who's going to be showing up. I don't think.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
at
nothing.
least, yeah.
It's just everyone on
I'll
the
be interested.
roster, basically.
I'll Yeah. I mean, I'll be interested to see who shows up and who gets a nod and everything. So we'll go from there. But these open tournaments early in the year are a good chance for a lot of guys to kind of get some experience under their belt and take care of business or whatever, and get some experience. So um, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see who will come out there and everything, but we'll get to that when all that's figured out.
Yeah, that's Sunday on Flow, I believe, starting at 10 a.m. Kind of just killing time until next Sunday, and that's when they go out to Lehigh and face off in a duel against them on December 8th at 2 p.m.
Mhm.
But that's really all I got. Actually, I do have to ask you one question because of course, this news broke right after we ended our last podcast. But Gabe Stevenson, um,
Oh
back.
yeah.
How much is that going to affect Kirk in his run?
It's going to be pretty tremendous considering,
Mm-hmm.
Kirk was kind of the favorite at that weight, and it didn't seem like there was too many guys that were going to, give him too much of a run. But now
Mm-hmm.
we have Stevenson back. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting because has Kirk beat Stevenson? No.
Mm-hmm.
Kassar got it, Kassar beat Stevenson. Um, I don't think that was the Gable Stevenson that is here now. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's an Olympic champ and spent some time in the NFL, and he's only getting better and has only gotten better. This kind of throws a wrench into things. Of course, he's not going to wrestle, I don't think, until January because that's when he can enroll. But um, yeah, I mean, this definitely throws a wrench into things. I mean, I think a lot of people had Kirk as the overwhelming favorite at heavyweight, and I think that's definitely changed. I don't know how big the skill gap is there or how competitive it's going to be. I'm not saying that one is going to run away from the other, but we haven't seen Gable wrestle at the collegiate level for a few years, so I'm not saying that he'll have any sort of mat rust or anything like that, but it might be interesting to see how things go early on. I'm sure he'll be fine, with the guys who are ranked, 10th and worse or whatever, probably fifth and worse. Um, I'm just not really sure what to expect from that. I'm expecting him to be really good. I'm expecting him to be in the finals, but I don't want to make any predictions. Of how he'll do against Kirk, just because we haven't seen him wrestle collegiately in a couple of years. So
Yeah, I am curious, and this is more because I'm such a diehard football fan. How much does that actually help? Will it help at all on the wrestling mat?
I think
There's a lot of hand
I think
technique in
that
football.
I think wrestling assists with the football. I
Hmm.
think there's no doubt. I mean, Tyler Linderbaum, the center for the Ravens, was a
Yeah.
high school state qualifier, I believe, in Iowa. I mean,
Hmm.
Ray Lewis was a Florida state champion. Um, Gable obviously went to the Bills, and
Hmm.
well, how deep did he make it? He was on the practice squad and then got cut.
Yeah, I mean that's still a lot further than a lot of
That's
guys.
really
So
good.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
really, really good. I mean, there's some really, really good college guys who go undrafted and then don't
Hmm.
get to a team at all. So
Yeah.
I don't know how much that'll translate to him now.
Hmm.
I think that the wrestling would help more than the football than vice versa, but
Okay.
um yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm excited to see him wrestle. I'm excited to see how he does. I think
Hmm.
he's going to be really great. I think he's going to pull maybe some more people into the sport, which is a good thing because
It's
people are
true.
kind of familiar with who he is. That's a good thing too. Mm, In terms of predictions, I just don't know.
Yeah, I am intrigued to see how it works out for him. But obviously a wrench in Kirk's side now a little bit. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that plays out. But like you said, can't enroll till January, so really not that big of a deal right now, but might be a big deal down the line. But anything else really before we sign off? A little bit of a shorter episode, but there were really not a whole lot to talk about in week one, I guess you can consider it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to the Big Ten schedule really kicking off and getting
Hmm.
to Lehigh and kind of getting some good competition going. So, we have a little bit more to give people who watch and everything. But at least wrestling season's here, so
It's
that's
true.
what we have to be super happy about. So,
Yeah, just killing time, trying to get through these holidays, and then we'll be right into not even Big Ten play. That Lehigh match, I'm really looking forward to. But after that, we'll have another I'm sure we'll have a preview, and we'll probably have a
yeah.
post match reaction too. So stay tuned
Mhm.
as always on the Penn State 360 or Penn State football YouTube channel here. Penn State Rivals at Penn State Rivals on every single social media network. But for me and Joey, that's another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. Signing off.